Hello, gorgeous people. This is your host, Ray Johnson of Sunshine and Star Show, and our star here.
Lauren, I hope everyone had an awesome summer. We're glad to be back.
Yep. And I'm going to hand it over to Lauren here to introduce the topic of discussion for today.
Of course. So for the past week, we were talking about our plans regarding marriage and motherhood. And even though that's a long way for us, well, for me personally, although not that long, like maybe another 7 or 8 years or so. And that goes by fast. But yeah, so we thought we'd give you our perspective on that and like how we plan to approach each and what we look for in a marriage and how we also plan to raise our kids too.
Awesome. And so since you brought up this idea, why don't you start with what your plans in those aspects are?
Sure. So for me, I've always known that I wanted to get married and have kids. But I always knew that I wanted to do it when the time was right. So I think for me, after I finish college and everything, and possibly graduate school too, and I'm established in my career, then I want to let God lead the right guy into my path at the right time. And I think I'll know because you just trust your heart. And so as of now, I would probably consider getting married around age 27 or 28 because I think late 20s is fine. And I'd like to have kids. I'd like to have my first child probably when I'm either 29 or 30, because I want to wait a while. I want to make sure that we're ready financially and emotionally too, because kids are a big responsibility. And remember, once you bring them into this world, they're yours for a lifetime.
Yeah, you can't put them back in.
Even though sometimes you might wish you could, because kids can be a handful at times.
Yeah, for me personally, I mean, my lovely boyfriend David's already said he would want to marry me, so I have a feeling we'll be together for the long haul because we already have been together for at least a couple years. So, and I want to enjoy my marriage, so I don't want to have kids right away. I want to have like a good few years to truly understand my husband and everything. And like Lauren said, definitely after college. Few years ago, I went to a couple of my best friends' weddings, although ironically enough, both of them were named Lauren.
Oh my gosh.
And they got married a month apart. Of course, 2 of them didn't know each other. And they were like 19, 20, and still in college. And I just, mad respect for y'all, because you clearly have loving husbands, and you guys are helping each other through it all. But I just could not do it while still in school without a consistently paying job. Like, I like lifeguarding here, but there's no way I can truly live off of that alone. So I just want to be financially stable first, and David wants to as well with all his theatrical aspirations. So yeah, I just couldn't imagine myself getting married while I'm still chasing after my degrees and everything. It just doesn't make sense for me personally. Although if you're able to do it otherwise, where you're still taking school, then mad props. But I could never. And as a mother, I mean, it's a lot easier to say it now before you are a mother with any of these things. But I hope to not be perceived as a helicopter parent, like, even if I only have 1 child or 3, doesn't really matter. I would just want them to feel as independent as possible, but also to know that they can always come to me and rely on me. They need to experiment with their life and find out what's right for them, with some common sense, not literally try everything, because there's some things you shouldn't do, like drugs and all that. But I just would want them to always feel like they are not pressured to pursue something just because we have, kind of deal, and to not have the perception of living vicariously through them or anything like that. So I don't want them to have any regrets or feel like they couldn't try something sooner because of the way I parented them. Like, that's just not fair for them or for me, really. So I just want them to grow in the best ways that they possibly can and not feel like they're being controlled,
Yeah, I agree. Like, we don't want kids to feel controlled because that can lead to, like, detrimental like health and mental effects later on in life too. So we don't want that. And I know when I have kids, like, of course, my faith has always been really important to me. So I want to marry a man who's compatible with me in that regard. And it's important that I pass that on to my kids too. And I think in terms of parenting skills, I want to raise my kids to be respectful people, obviously, but I also want them to know that their voice matters and that it's okay to be outspoken, stand up for what's right, and, like, advocate for what is right too. Because I want them to realize that in life they are entitled to be respected, they're entitled to be loved, and I don't want them to repeat some of the mistakes I made when I was younger because I didn't know that my voice mattered. And I want my kids to know that their voice matters. And even though as a mother, and I'm going to have to probably make most of the decisions for them, I want them to know that I'm still willing to hear them out and at least let them have a voice too.
Yeah, one of the biggest regrets I've had about myself mentally is being really self-conscious about the way I appear, especially with continuing to still battle with acne and things like that. I just don't want them to feel uncomfortable in their own bodies, and if they ever do, to know that I'll always be there for them to help them talk them through it, be like, hey, I went through this too, even though it may not seem like it, because in your eyes, I'm much older than when I was going through it, when I was around your age, but it has happened, and I just want them to feel comfortable enough to talk about those points in their life, because everyone has their own insecurities at one point or another, but I just don't want it to be a resounding voice in their head like it was for me. So that's definitely a huge thing for me. I want to instill those thoughts can appear, but to them to not ruminate and linger in their minds.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things I also want to teach my kids is the importance of, I want to instill the importance of hard work in them too, because I know that there are a lot of parents in the world who will go out of their way to spoil their kids, do everything for them, and basically buy their way through life and buy their education. And I don't like that, because I want my kids to have good educations. I want them to be well educated and intelligent people. So, and I want them to also learn to be independent, because I think one of the best lessons you can teach your kids is to how to survive on their own, because my husband and I are not always going to be around, but I want to know that at least when that day comes, we don't have to worry about our kids not being able to be self-sufficient, because we will have impressed that on them at a young age.
Yeah, I'm not going to raise mini entitled Karens. No way.
Oh, no.
Yeah, whether it's through a paid job or volunteering, or however means they go about it, I want them to also be able to work hard and to understand the value of you get rewarded for working towards something. And I'm also going to try to make sure when I'm researching schools and stuff that, I don't place them in a school where it's participation trophies, because, that's really teaches you a bad lesson of, I can just put minimum effort and still get a reward of some sort, That's just, that ain't it.
No, it's not. So I think one of the things I look forward to most is just knowing that one day it's going to happen, because it's something I've always anticipated and I've looked forward to. So of course, we don't really know what it's like until the moment arrives. So that's just something I tend to think about a lot, because it's so exciting. Do you feel that way sometimes too?
Yeah. I also want to make sure that, because every new mom will go through it, just like we will at some point, to not put too much pressure on myself to be the perfect parent, because we're all human beings. And I also want to show to my children that, I'm here to guide you and to hope you have the best life possible, but also I'm a human too, so as much as I want you to respect me, you don't have to hold me in high regard in the sense of being perfect all the time. I'm gonna mess up, you're gonna mess up, and I just want them to know that they can feel comfortable talking about those things and to not put me on a pedestal,
Yeah, because I think sometimes there's a lot of pressure put on parents to be the perfect parents, because it's assumed that just because they're parents, they know it all, they have all the answers, and they're going to do everything right 100% of the time, and that's not necessarily true. Like, even though you're a parent, you're still a human being. You're going to make mistakes, just like your kids are going to make mistakes. And kids don't come with instruction manuals too. So I'd say just do the best you can, and as long as you know you're doing it right, then you have a lot to be proud of. I'd say pat yourself on the back.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, just like you make your own choices and everything, they do too. So it's not like you can make their choices for them. So they shouldn't ever feel that, not only that you're leading with an iron fist or anything like that, but that it's okay for them as well to not be perfect, because no one is and no one ever will be. And I just want to make sure to guide them through all of that, especially because with social media, with us growing up with it, and I'm sure it's going to be a lot worse for them, It's so easy to think you always have to look and act and be a certain way. But even those people don't. They just post the perfect moments and get attention that way and feel better about themselves. But even they're like, well, dang, even I can't always be what I portray online. So I just don't want them to think they have to be something they're not.
Exactly. And so I'd say, like, don't always try to emulate what you see on social media, because although there's a saying that pictures don't lie, well, sometimes they can, because while it may appear through social media that people are happy and everything's perfect, we don't really know what's going on behind closed doors. We don't know what insecurities or struggles they might be enduring, and we don't know what their family or friend dynamic is really like. It could be toxic, so you just never know. And you shouldn't compare yourself to other people either, because the reason God created you the way you are is because the world does not need another so-and-so.
Yeah, and when they get older, like about our age, and go to college and everything, I don't want them to feel pressure that they have to join a sorority or fraternity, because like my parents at first kept pushing it a lot, and I'm like, no, I'm doing Sea Scouts, like there's no way I'd have time to anyways. And obviously there could be a lot of good people in those environments, and kudos to them, but for me personally, every time I've had a roommate from a sorority or had a friend that then later fell off within our group, they were always just mean and inconsiderate people, and I just happened to have like the worst experience with that. So I don't want them to feel like they have to join those kinds of things. They can join other clubs that would get them just as much benefits or even more, honestly. But I just personally don't see the appeal in those. I mean, if they want to and they find a good group of people that aren't fake or just want to do it for attention and make themselves look good, then by all means. But from my perspective personally, I just haven't found that to be the case, and I feel like it's a lot more rare than, it's made out to be. Like,
yeah, and like to also add on to what you were saying about like not surrounding yourself with fake people, I want to, like, even starting when my kids are young, I want to educate them on what a true friend is, because I've always said that true friends are people who love and accept you for who you are. They care about you, respect you, they uplift you, and they share your values. So I want my kids to understand before they start school that they should never surround themselves with anyone just to say, oh, I have someone, or I have a so-called friend, because it takes time to build a friendship, and I want them to know like what to look for in a friend, because while sometimes it may be cool to hang out with people and you laugh, you have a good time, that doesn't mean that they're genuine friends, especially if they've proven that they don't respect you, they don't care about you, and you find that you're the one like pulling most of the weight in the friendship, and you're doing all the giving, always doing favors for them, and they rarely or never reciprocate.
Yeah, that actually kind of reminds me of a saying that I heard once, where you are your closest 5 friends, and that's true on so many levels. I mean, you start to emulate their personalities, and if you're around toxic people, before you know it, you become what you despise, and before it gets too late, you should just avoid those kind of things. Now, I know that people like that typically start out really chill and friendly, so it can take some time to discover that. But once you do, just I want to instill in them to not be in denial and to feel they can talk to me about it, to make sure, is this really not what it should be? And to give them the best advice on how to just cut yourself off from a friend like that in a non-vindictive way, so that even if they do make up lies and rumors about you, they don't have any merit because you weren't annoying about it to where you give them an excuse to truly, turn it around on you as the bad person kind of thing. So, and even in like group project things where you're not necessarily friends with them, but friendly, or workplace, whatnot, I want to teach them that, like, the proper way to not necessarily call someone out for being toxic, but more just bring it to their attention personally, so that you still hold the other genuine friends close to you and them not being persuaded by the other person, so that it's a lot more obvious that person is in the wrong and not, my future kid. So
yeah, and I also want them to understand that it's okay to detach themselves from people who are toxic and who are fake. And I think sometimes the reason why kids don't do that, especially when they're in middle or high school, is because during that particular stage in their life, it's important for them to have a clique. It's important for them to fit in. And they might be afraid of being alone if they were to separate themselves from that. So that's why they tolerate it, even though they might not think they're condoning the behavior, they are. So I want them to know that there are other people out there who are genuine and who are kind people, and they should not settle for less. I know that sounds kind of cocky saying that, but it's the truth. Don't settle for anything less than that, because they don't deserve that.
Yeah, and to also instill the value of the fine line between knowing your worth and being full of yourself, because mentally I've always wondered, like, logically I've known there's a difference, but like applying it to myself where I wasn't like insecure and things like that, just realizing you can be confident in yourself, but not to the point where you're arrogant about it, Like, I've never been an arrogant person, but I've always thought if I was confident that I inevitably would be, and that's not true. There is a difference, and there's a reason. They're two different words. So I want them to know that they are worthy and can be confident in themselves, but not to the point where you tear other people down or hold yourself higher than you actually are. Because you should be ambitious and aim high, but not at an expense to anyone else. And honestly, it shortchanges yourself too.
It does. Like, as if I'd get on my kids' case if I knew they were going around bullying someone or mistreating them or trying to come across as superior to others, because that's not right. Yes, well, I want them to be confident, as what Rae is saying. I don't want them going around putting other people down, because that's not right. That's not what God would want, and that's not how I'm raising them to be. And like, no one's going to respect someone like that or hold them in high esteem.
I mean, yeah, you may gain a position with that attitude, but it will only work in the short term. Long term, people just won't continue to tolerate it, and then things will just unravel and get worse from there. So it's best to not, when experiencing those feelings, to go to someone. Hopefully they can feel comfortable enough to go to me, or to just realize by maybe watching other people that live that way, it's like, I don't really want to be like that, because they tend to repulse people and not truly as close to them as they could be. So
Exactly, yeah.
Well, that's all we have time for today, and we hope you enjoy our rebound, if you will, for doing this as our third season. That crazy?
Yeah, that's right. That means we're making progress. We're climbing up the ladder up to stardom.
Yeah. Well, stay gorgeous, people, and be kind.
And stay tuned, because you never know what we have in store for you next.
True. Bye.
Bye.
Hello.